All right, the game is improving, but can we make it in time? I took a little while to gather my thoughts on this playtest. The game itself is in a good state, things are improving, but there's a lot to talk about. Bit of a rant. So I'm not going to talk too long about the obvious. That's been beaten to a bloody pulp in the feedback channel. But what we do need to talk about is the potential roadmap, looking towards the future, communication, and what we're going to need now that we pretty much know that the game will be entering early access in around February, probably. So, quickly, the obvious. Heavies are still overpowered, lights are better, but still useless. The Nitron's a nice addition, but the Nitron itself is then an issue in itself. It's my belief that this still can be remedied with a single weapon type, a single weapon for each type, and, you know, averaging away the differences in health, and so you know what you are being shot at. I already made a video about that with the patch notes, so we won't dwell on that a little bit too long. I do see a lot of people who want to go back to Tribes Ascends classes and see this with some kind of, ironically, rose-tinted glasses of nostalgia, which usually gets, well, the veterans get blamed about. But you guys forget how long it took to balance all those things, how broken some of those things were, how things were immediately banned in competition, because otherwise everything would break at a decent level, not on a pub level, of course, where we could just shoot along and nobody really cared. And that it's at the core of what made Tribes Ascend crumble. Of course, we're not dealing with unlocks this time, but having to individually balance every single weapon variant in the game invariably takes a longer time. The idea that modern games do this, so maybe we should too. Modern games do this because they want... This is the Dota style balancing, the Overwatch style balancing that nearly killed the game, by the way, the Apex style balancing. Keeping it unstable so the meta doesn't get solved is what's happening here. Changing up variables, switching the meta. We don't want that. We want a stable game, so your team play, the way the maps are negotiated, those things change the meta, right? So let's not do that, because we clearly don't have the time to extend the resources, the man hours, to do this little game. Let's try the single weapons. We're probably not going to do that, but all right. Getting shot by a weapon and knowing exactly the amount of damage you're gonna take is kind of nice. So, but let's not further dwell on that. One more point on that, though. The games that made this franchise legendary did it the other way. All right, just saying. Now, the physics were better, although the way we accelerate right now makes me a little worried about how this will hold up on better maps. We're getting better maps, right? More on that later. So, the 3 flag limit was interesting, but of course needs to be reverted to at least 5. Or, suggestion, hi, just set a 15-minute timer so everybody at least gets a bit of a game in, especially when the queues are long, and then have overtime if we're on the tie. Why 5? You know, if there's a decent capper, they will cap out the map. If it's 3, it's in 4 minutes, or in 2 minutes. If it's 5, it'll be in 4 minutes, right? Just give us 15 minutes on the map. We play, hurrah. Because this really exposed a very big issue with pub play for me. I, at one point, just wanted to lounge around in the server. I just wanted to play a bit. It's a pub, doesn't really matter. Let me ski around, let me do some silly things. But I never felt I had the time or could, because, well, for one, all the heavies were taken, so I couldn't really ruin everybody's fun in the generator room, but which is still pointless. People are in the generator room because they've been doing that, right? Generator is mostly pointless right now, still. That's another issue. But the thing is, I'm not explicitly talking about dedicated servers here, because that's a technology lost to time, however, apparently, right? So the more that we... I just want to go from map to map. I don't want to queue again. I don't want to do the stupid lobby thing that is standard now because of Battle Royale games. Because let's face it, that's what the code is, isn't it? That's from Dead Zone probably, but still. Give a window of rejoining of people, you know, at the end of the map, rejoins coming in, have those servers running. Is that a problem? Then that is a core feature we are missing. This is not a game that you do like an Overwatch game, because that's not how this game was ever played. Even Ascend had servers that you can stick around in. It is necessary for a game like this. Kicking out everyone in each game, especially with the 3 cap limit, was completely awful. And when I was running some custom lobbies with the codes, it really gave me not too fun memories of hosting private bail runs in Diablo 2. Worrisome. I have a note here that says worrisome in my 1,000-word script that I wrote for this video, and I'm not editing it because it's late. I'm tired. I've been putting this off, and I want it out before the next playtest. We're still fiddling with the basics of physics when we have a draft tournament on the way that is acting as a large marketing ploy. It is community driven, and I love that it's happening, but let's face it, it's probably also going to be the biggest marketing we'll have because before the early access. And yes, there will be a streamer push, but well, more on that later. The problem is we only get one launch, and well, maps. We learned from Merez that the average time it takes to create a map is 2 weeks. I cannot stress enough that this is the wrong way to do it. And this is not Idea Guy Greth from back in Tribe's Ascent. We are or were in an alpha. We need to be testing height maps quickly. We don't need AAA or even AA finish. We need terrain, we need stands, and 2 flags. That's it. We need to be testing, finding an archetype. As I stated more than a month ago in my initial video, which was released December 2nd. I'm making an original hand-painted map in an hour. I'm playing on it within 2 hours. I can make 50 variants of that in 3 hours, including the sorting out of what is viable or not, if you have a proper setting, if you have proper math backing it. It's not harder than that, because I've been doing it for the last 2 years of various projects, 2 of which actually made it to Steam in some capacity. Were they successes? That doesn't really matter. It's the core of the terrains that was functional. If I'm wrong here, please tell me where, because this hasn't been rocket science for quite some time. We're still building maps like we're in 2012, and we have different ways. We had different ways back then. That's when I learned it. Yes, spawn points, skyboxes, all those things, baking in the lighting. Granted, but you're a professional developer and I am a hobbyist. Why is this difficult? Why are other projects, I give them a map within a few hours, voila. We have to brute force our way through creating the meta for these maps. The archetype needs to be found. And that is not feedback, that is fact. Even if you simply take, and this is not a Tribe's veteran grizzled man speaking here, because I don't agree with what I'm about to say, but you can take Tribes 1, Tribes 2, hell even Ascend, input them into your game, stand, be done with it. They don't need to be fancy. We literally need a hole in the ground to stick a flag in, and we can test these maps and find out if they're viable, and meanwhile also test your physics. You can put 9 of these things in a square with a teleporter. Let us just run around on the terrains. On roaming, it doesn't have to be live. It doesn't have to be in a queue. But give us the tools to do so. Use us as your QA team. Because you don't have to make my terrain. Okay? I've given that. People have used it. People have loved it. Don't use it. But use the tools. Use the workflow. I've done 2 streams on this. I've put it all on YouTube. I can be of assistance there. Don't make my maps, but make maps that are available with those tools, and don't handcraft them. I can't imagine why you wouldn't want a workflow that cuts down your time by a factor of 1,000. So explain this to me, please. Then we have to talk about roadmap. The roadmap. Is there one? Please. What is planned? What can we expect? How much is going to be ready for early access? Because one of the key things, and it has been stated before and cannot be understated, new player onboarding. Your game lives and dies with the new player's first experience, especially if you're a bot game right now and you're not doing free to play. We were promised extensive tutorials the last time around with Tribes Ascend, and we got stuck with exactly the placeholder stuff that we now also have in the game. We need a way for roles to be explained to new players. CTF hasn't been around for a while, and especially not the high-intensity team game that Tribes Ascend had, or that Tribes has in general. Capper, offense, the concept of disruption rather than killing, defense, heavy on flag, chaser. If you play a pub right now, you don't know what any of that is because it's invisible skill, it's invisible knowledge that isn't being conveyed. If you don't have that, you're just going to be killing randoms in a midfield and llama flag now and again. And that was 90% of people's Tribes Ascend experience. They got bored and they quit. Think about the Call of Duty guys in the midfield just shooting each other, hadn't even noticed that we were flying high above. I keep saying that because that is burned into my retinas, that I see. I saw those people having a wonderful time for about an hour, and then like, well, this is just Halo, I'm out. Then of course, spectator modes. We have a draft tournament. I hope to be casting. Let's not get stuck with an invisible Shrike this time. If you know, you know. Hi Bart. Progression. Something not really core to the mind of the average triber, especially not the grizzled veterans. But if the people don't have their dailies and achievements, then things are going to be grim. Even in early access, there needs to be at least a whiff of that. But we'll see. We haven't really seen much of that. We've seen some skins. Hey, I have an idea. If you win a casual game, somebody on the server gets a free skin. There you go. Incentive, at least for a week or so. Then, of course, ranked and casual play. How that's going to be balanced, that's a whole another can of worms that we really haven't talked about yet, but that's going to be relevant. I know with the draft tournament, you're going to be kicking off the sweat, and they want to be accommodated. Otherwise, well, you will have the core of your competitive esports go back to what they were doing, probably playing the finals, which is a travesty. And now, if you thought I was done, I have a bit of a hot take section here. Do we need to casualize CTF in order to keep people interested? Because of the problems above, those who are unwilling to learn will always be disruptive. This is why you have in Overwatch, you have a set barrier, and not just casual, but also in ranked. In Overwatch, you have a hard set barrier of the people who are good at shooters that will not progress above platinum or diamond because they never learn the game. Even though there you have tank damage support. People don't learn the roles because it's an invisible thing. So should we casualize CTF? Probably, because that's what Tribes did with the base mode. And that's an issue of scope right now, because scope doesn't necessarily mean more dev time or more complexity. This in itself, again, is solved because we have the templates of the old games. You have things for the non-flag people to do. Drive around vehicles, repair things, destroy generators, generally having a good time, setting up beacons, doing all these things. And at that stage, why not just have a ranked mode for 30 versus 30, huh? It'll be a shit show, it'll be glorious, just backfill it with the casual queuers if you don't get a match in under 5 minutes. Just, you know, do something silly. That scope is not that gigantic. Every single time, both times, we've seen a need to reduce the scope of this game to its detriment, I think. If you want something that people just want to log in for after a day's work, because that's your demographic, at least at the start, I don't want to sweat around in 7v7s or even 12v12s. I want to be screwing around a little bit. Hell, we did that in Unreal Tournament with the onslaught mode and all that. And here comes the hot take. I think Star Siege Raider should become this game's casual mode. You play some Jetpack Tarkov, and then you play Tribes Arena. Let's not kid ourselves. You remake things that already exist. So, yeah, I'll play some Jetpack Tarkov, and then I'll maybe play a couple of ranked games. Build yourself a platform. Isn't that what Fortnite is doing? What other games are doing? What even Apex is trying? Are you going to be the single developer? The single game developer, should I say? Build out a platform, grow gradually. Because that's the way you justify continuing development, right? Hopefully accepting some donations for height maps along the way, but I don't want this game to die in early access when the metrics invariably drop off after a few months and nobody really had the opportunity to learn the game. Tribes 1 and 2 were generational games. They lasted a while, and it splintered, of course, and because there was no longer a developer, yeah. So going into that, I am being negative. I'm not being all positive. But that's because I'm a little tired. We've done this before. And most of the community is now old men. So we don't need to go for the corporate song and dance on this one. We want the game, we need the game. We want this to succeed, we need this to succeed. But we've done this before. There aren't really that many wheels here that need reinventing, because they've been gone for such a long time that who's to say that simply remastering a thing. We've had examples, we've had successes in that. Look at BattleBits very recently. Got the bullshit, get the game everybody wanted. Oh my god, look, it worked. The problem with these genres is not that they're boomer shooters. It's that the entire genre, including Quake and anything like it, hasn't seen a decent release in over a decade. And I'm not even counting TA there, because it was popular for a brief moment, but itself as well can't really be counted as the revival of a genre, of a scene. briefly we had a taste like Tantalus. We reached out, it came short. I think we're not giving the genre a fair shake with what we have right now. And farting out a Tribes Rocket League isn't going to magically solve this. If you truly love this genre and want this genre to succeed, then it's time for a different MO. And we need a sign about that. We can have scattered messages here and there, but we need clear and concise communication on what is going to happen here, how this is going to progress. We'll play it. Our soul is bound. But can we give it a fair shot? Because that's my fear. In April or May, we'll see 2 more map releases. We'll get a couple of skins. Let's have a bit of comp. Have a good time. Casting the game again. Seeing some tournaments. And that'll be that. Let's not.